Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the icebreaker and had an opportunity to connect with some old friends, some new friends, and maybe find some things in common. Uh, so we're now ready to move on to the keynote panel. Jessica Provencher, a long-serving member of CWCF's board, a member of Co-operators board, and advisor to the Réseau Co-ops board, will facilitate this section. So over to you, Jessica.
Merci, Reba. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was going to say welcome everyone and bonjour tout le monde. So maybe you didn't have the memo or you didn't hear the first part of this session, but you have access to interpretation down on your Zoom screen. You have the globe there because I will be, and at least one of our presenters will be speaking in French later on. And we have French and English interpretation. So if that's helpful for you, I hope you can use it. Donc, je m'appelle Jessica Provencher. Je suis, comme Reba le disait, administratrice à la Fédération canadienne des coopératives de travailleurs. Je me joins à vous aujourd'hui à partir de la ville de Québec. Je suis très honorée, je me sens privilégiée de faciliter cette première session qui ouvre la semaine de congrès de la Fédération canadienne des coops de travail avec la première séance sur libérons le potentiel des coops de travailleurs. So welcome to this exciting panel. I'm honored to be facilitating it with the four excellent, experienced, and thoughtful panelists that we have today, the speakers. I wish I could not see myself so big and see all of you, so I'll try to move that. Yeah, that's better. So I will introduce them a little, and then we will have a 40 minutes session where the presenters will present their own parts, and then we'll ask you to join the conversation later for the last 24 or 25 or 30 minutes or so. So yeah, I see all of my colleagues presenters here. Welcome. So si vous ne les connaissez pas, je vous invite à aller lire sur leur travail et aller lire leur bio sur le site de la Fédération canadienne des coops de travailleurs. Vous aurez la chance d'entendre un peu plus sur leur rôle aujourd'hui, mais je vous invite à connecter avec leurs organisations et à poursuivre la conversation aussi après la rencontre. So maybe I'll introduce the four great people that I have here with me. So the first speaker will be Russ Christensen. Yes, thanks, Russ. If you don't know Russ, you probably don't know CWCF. He's been around for a long time, but yeah, it's great to have you on the panel today. So Russ is an Ontario-based cooperative developer whose expertise has shaped countless thriving co-ops, including parts of the Worker Co-op Academy, the CWCF Worker Co-op Academy. Frédéric Plante va parler juste après. Donc, bienvenue Frédéric, merci de te joindre à nous. Frédéric vient de la part du Réseau Co-op, la Fédération québécoise des coopératives détenues par les travailleurs. Donc, l'organisation au Québec qui chapeaute et rassemble les coopératives de travail et les coopératives de solidarité à prédominance travailleurs. Je vais essayer de parler moins vite. Donc, Frédéric et le réseau sont des leaders innovants dans le développement des coopératives de travail, notamment au Québec. Et il va nous parler du parcours coop et de la façon dont le réseau génère des écosystèmes de coopératives. Ensuite, next, we have Julia Martins Rodriguez, representing both the International Center for Cooperative Management at St. Mary's University and Namaste Solar, a worker co-op shining and developing ecosystems and network in the renewable energy sector. Welcome, Julia. Thanks for being here. Oh, thanks, Rosa. I made a mistake there, I believe. Or maybe not, you're just sharing your... Anyway, thank you. And finally, we have Mario Simet from Solid State Community Industries in Surrey, BC. Thanks, Mario, for being here. Mario supports co-ops in scaling and accessing growth capital, most recently with Seeds Commons, which he will talk about later. And so I welcome you all, and I think we'll get this started. We're right on time. So Russ will be the first to speak, and I'm not sure. I have another bio here, so maybe I can read it and you go there. So for over 3 decades, Russ Christensen has been working with communities, cooperative enterprises, unions, environmental organizations, and private businesses to meet their strategic goals and develop good governance practices. He has helped launch over 200 cooperatives with a 70% success rate, for which he gives the founders credit, just to be clear. I think there's a little of you in there too, Russ. In his work, he is notably involved with CWCF, Ontario Co-op Association, and Co-op Zone. And we asked him to share his work today, but also his philosophical views on co-ops and co-ops development. Thanks for being here, and the floor is yours for the next 8 minutes or so.
Okay, great. I'm going to time myself, but you can always cut me off too. So welcome, everybody. It's really great to see so many people here, and it's exciting for this conference. And what an amazing panel of people. Lovely to see everyone. I just wanted to mention that, like, my bio is already out of date because it's actually 4 decades now. And probably like 300 plus co-ops, but I've lost count. And I wish it was more, because when I was in my 20s, I set out to just help start up as many co-ops as possible that would be sustainable, like a triple bottom line. And, you know, it's not easy to make a living as a co-op developer in Canada, and maybe it's easier in Quebec, so outside of Quebec in Canada, but that's why I've also worked with other kinds of organizations, and including right now, I'm the general manager of the Iron Theatre Cooperative in Campbellford, which is a consumer co-op. So in terms of the ecosystem, it's a great question, because, you know, I really do feel that this is an amazing time for worker co-ops. Co-ops tend to start up and have a lot of momentum when times are tough. And I think times are tough right now. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done around climate and inequality and diversity and equity. So I think it's an ideal time for bringing democracy to the workplace. And we can see that what's happening, you know, down south in the United States, the election outcome, it doesn't look that great for the world or for the United States, but I think that makes it even more important for us to focus on what we can do with worker cooperatives and democracy in our workplace. So I'm going to share some PowerPoint slides. So here's the opening one, and it is called Unleashing Worker Co-ops for Success. So I just want to make a couple comments about that before I move to the next slide. But in terms of an ecosystem, you know, Canada's got a long history, including Quebec. And when I say Canada, it includes everybody, regarding cooperative development, well over 100 years. And honestly, before there were settlers in our country, there's Indigenous communities that basically operated very much like cooperatives with a cooperative value system, even though they didn't have the formal idea of private property or organizational, you know, structures and legal systems in the same way that settlers had. So I think we come from a long history in this country, thousands of years of cooperation. And that's probably the most important point, I think, is that human beings have a high propensity to cooperate, and that's why we're successful as a species. So it's always good to remember that. And for co-op developers, when you're working with groups, part of it's adult education, and that's a good thing to remind people of the evolutionary biology and psychology of human beings cooperating to be successful as a species. So I'm not going to go through all the ecosystem things in Canada because there's a lot of them, but I would like to just share a slide that I'm trying to move this forward. Okay, there we go. I really love quotes, and I'm not going to read these out to you. You can read them yourselves, but I think the important thing to understand here is that this current ecosystem that economically we call capitalism, it hasn't always been around, and it's not going to always be around. And we can create the kind of economic system that we want to have. That's part of being a democratic society. So, I mean, I would really love to see us, erode capitalism before it erodes itself and the rest of us with them. So I think this is something that we can all really work on together. And that's what we're doing as worker co-ops, is bringing together people to a more humane kind of economy that's focused on meeting people's needs and relationships and the social aspects of human beings being more important than just hoarding wealth, which is what capitalism does. So there's a number of comments there, and we'll stop with Noam Chomsky's that people should control their own work. And I think that pretty well says it all in terms of worker cooperatives. So I was asked to talk a little bit about the Worker Co-op Academy. It's been my pleasure to work together with CWCF and the development of this, and it's based on the Rousseau's parcours work that they've done. And we started this just before the pandemic, and the CWCF is completely online with the Academy. Sometimes the mentors or coaches meet with people in their communities. I think parcours started out in person, and then during the pandemic, it went online, and now it's back in person again, or maybe hybrid. So Frederic can speak more about that. We have had 3 cohorts of 3 co-ops each, and the academy itself, for anyone that might be interested that's starting a worker cooperative, the courses are about 11 months in total, and there's 15 webinars and 5 coaching sessions. We go into some depth around basically creating a pathway and a strategy and a business plan for worker co-ops for startup. And I think CWCF's accepting applications right now, which is great. And then you can see the different concepts that we actually follow through in the development of a full business plan, with the opportunity to make a presentation or a pitch to potential investors, including Tenacity Works, which is CWCF's fund, and other potential investors. So a friendly audience, I would say, patient capital, not the Shark Tank, or I can't remember what the one in Canada is called, but for entrepreneurs.
Dragon Den, yeah.
Thank you. Dragon Den, that's
Something
the
like
one.
that, yeah.
Yes. So I think as co-op developers and for worker cooperatives, there's 2 really big opportunities that we have in the coming number of years, say in the next 10 years. So one is co-op conversions. And I know Hazel and the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation are working hard on government lobbying around this to get some federal government support for co-op conversions from retiring business owners. So this is really demographically driven, and baby boomer retiring business owners, there's a lot of them in Canada. Even if you got a small percentage, we would be doing very well with worker cooperatives. And from my experience, if you can help convert an existing going concern business into a worker cooperative, it's a lot easier to be successful than trying to start one from scratch. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and CWCF identified this a long time ago, like back in 2005. So it's not a new idea, but it's one that is here right now, and we should be doing whatever we can to make this happen and creating an ecosystem to unleash the success of co-op conversions. The second one is home care worker co-ops. Again, this is demographically driven. 95% of Canadians over 65 do not want to go to a long-term care home. They want to age as well as they can with dignity at home. And there's great systems and support to do that if we have a home care system that is focused on really taking care of the people, but also taking care of the caregivers. That's often the thing that's neglected. So as a worker cooperative, taking care of the caregivers is built right into the system. So I helped during the pandemic start up the Home Care Workers Cooperative in Peterborough. They're really successful. They are a not-for-profit, non-share worker cooperative. And they've helped launch the Cooperative Care Alliance, which is replicating the model across Ontario. And I know there have been other home care worker co-ops across Canada, but now is just a brilliant time to support and make these things happen. So I think I'm done, and I'm going to stop sharing. And I think Frédéric is next.
Yes.
So I look forward to discussion later on in this webinar, and it's off to you, Frédéric.
Oh, yes. Just before you go, Frédéric, thank you so much, Russ, and thank you for setting the stage. Yeah, these quotes are inspiring, and the opportunities that you just mentioned are really interesting to see how it's important to unleash worker co-ops, and it's timely. So thank you very much. Frédéric, je vais parler en français. J'ai juste un petit mot d'introduction pour toi aussi, pour préparer la scène. Donc, je rappelle que Frédéric est conseiller en développement des coopératives de travail, ainsi que coach coordonnateur au parcours coop chez Réseau Coop. Une formation qui a largement fait ses preuves depuis plus de 10 ans. Merci. Il est spécialiste en développement stratégique et en modélisation d'affaires et en 30 ans de pratique. Est-ce que c'est 30 ou 40 pour toi? C'est 30?
Plus 30, oui.
Oui, pardon, je blaguais. Il a accompagné plus de 250 projets coopératifs dans divers secteurs. Il vient nous partager aujourd'hui son expérience du développement et de la mise en réseau de coopératives. Merci Frédéric. À toi la parole.
Merci, Jessica. Hi, everyone. Good to be here with you. Just want to salute you in English. Unfortunately, I will be doing my presentation in French because my brain is too tired to be in the English mode right now. But I'll be pleased to answer your question in English afterwards. So don't worry about that. So please do. I'll be glad to answer it in English. So right away, I'll share my screen just in a few seconds here. Can handle the technology. Jessica, est-ce que tu peux me confirmer qu'on voit bien mon écran?
Je vois bien ton écran.
OK. Alors oui, bonjour, et mon nom est Frédéric. Je suis très heureux et merci beaucoup à la FCCT de nous avoir invités, Réseau Coop, à cette belle conférence. Et je vais essayer de rebondir sur ce que Ross a mentionné un peu, sans non plus tomber dans le détail et répéter des éléments qu'il a mentionnés. Donc, je vais essayer d'avoir une distinction pour ce thème, cette thématique qui est libérer le potentiel et le succès des coopératives de travail partout au Canada. Et je vais vous parler de notre point de vue à la posture québécoise des coopératives de travail. Réseau Coop, comme ça a été mentionné tout à l'heure, nous sommes la fédération des coopératives gérées par les travailleurs au Québec. Comme vous pouvez voir à l'écran, petit aperçu des membres du Réseau Coop à travers ces photos, cette belle mosaïque. Nous avons aujourd'hui, en 2024, 125 membres qui sont dans différents secteurs d'activité. Vous les avez ici, soit ça peut être l'architecture, l'art, la culture, le génie, ça peut être aussi la traduction, comme la coopérative Largo, qui a d'ailleurs été qui est d'ailleurs aussi passé par le parcours coop et qui aujourd'hui fait notre traduction. Merci beaucoup, Largo. Donc, je vous dis ça parce que c'était pas toujours le cas. Le réseau coop, en 2008, on était 14 membres coopératives. Et vous voyez on a multiplié par 10 l'écosystème qui se réunit à travers cette fédération des coops de travail aujourd'hui. Alors, cela est dû en grande partie par ce que je vais essayer de vous faire comme démonstration, un peu notre posture à nous pour, je dirais, développer et consolider le tissu coopératif de travailleurs, travailleuses au Québec. Alors, je vais vous parler un peu du continuum de services du réseau coop. Vous allez comprendre un peu comment on fait un peu la recette, si vous voulez, du réseau coop. Euh, Avant de vous parler du parcours coop, qui est un peu un élément important de notre travail, nous avons en amont ce que nous appelons découvrir la formule coop de travail. Donc, nous avons des outils, développer des outils pour que les gens puissent travailler leur idée et ensuite s'initier à la coopération du travail, savoir si c'est vraiment la formule qui correspond à leurs aspirations et on a à ce moment-là un outil comme la boussole entrepreneuriale, qui est un site web qui permet d'identifier si la formule coop, à travers un petit test en ligne, si la formule coop est intéressante. Nous avons aussi des formations de base qui sont c'est quoi une coopérative, puis on les a programmées déjà à l'avance. Donc, ça se book au fur et à mesure. À chaque mois, on a au moins 1 à 2 formations gratuites. C'est quoi le coop? Puis on a du 15 à 20 personnes à chaque fois qui viennent s'informer. Nous avons aussi développé toute la question du transfert coop, donc la reprise collective par les travailleurs d'entreprise. Et nous avons développé des outils, un site Internet, des outils. Et nous faisons aussi des webinaires pratiquement tous les 3 mois sur le transfert d'entreprise. Ce qui nous amène à alimenter le pipeline, si vous voulez, de projets coop qu'on amène à travers, entre autres, le parcours coop, qui est vraiment un peu comme le Worker Co-op Academy, dont Ross nous a parlé tantôt. Je ne vais pas entrer dans le détail, simplement vous donner quelques chiffres par rapport au parcours coop, parce que c'est similaire à ce que Ross a décrit tantôt. Mais si jamais vous voulez en savoir davantage, vous irez voir sur notre site Internet. Mais c'est vraiment un parcours qui permet de démarrer la coopérative jusqu'à son financement et son démarrage, ce qui nous amène ensuite dans le continuum de services à aller vers la stabilité, le développement, voire la croissance des coopératives de travail. Et pour ce faire, on travaille sur 3 aspects. On travaille sur l'accompagnement des coops qui sont déjà existantes et qui ont besoin de services, conseils, soit en gestion collective, en gouvernance, en ressources humaines, en marketing, en finance. Nous avons développé maintenant une équipe. Nous sommes rendus 9, presque 10 maintenant, et nous avons donc des spécialistes dans chacun des domaines qui permet d'accompagner les coopératives dans leurs besoins. Nous offrons aussi un package de formation et d'éducation coopérative, à la fois pour les membres des coops de travail existantes, mais aussi pour les coops, que ce soit en termes de gestion des excédents, que ce soit en termes de planification stratégique et tout autre service. Donc, on a des formations spécialisées qui permettent aux coopératives de se former et de s'autonomiser par rapport à leur gestion et par rapport à leur développement. Et nous avons un troisième, et c'est surtout là-dessus que je vais insister pour le reste de ma présentation, c'est les activités de mutualisation. Alors, pour les activités de mutualisation, vous allez voir, on est un peu dans différentes modes et intensités de pratique. Nous en avons, je vais tout de suite y aller d'ailleurs, et je vais passer par-dessus le parcours coop parce que c'est vraiment ça dont je veux vous parler. Je ne sais pas si ma collègue Mathilde est ici dans la salle, mais c'est généralement elle qui anime ces sessions. Je vous présente la courte pointe. Comment je pourrais la traduire? Je suis sûr que mes amis de l'argot vont savoir vous traduire ça. La courte pointe, c'est un peu l'image d'une couverture faite de petits carrés avec différents motifs, tous attachés ensemble, qui forment un kilt, si vous voulez, très confortable et très rassurant. Donc, la courte pointe est un peu un safe space pour nos membres qui vont décider ensemble de certaines thématiques pour lesquelles ils vont vouloir discuter entre elles et nous animons tout simplement, nous avons une posture d'animateur, nous animons tout simplement cette courte pointe pour faciliter les échanges, le partage d'expertise avec, entre les coopératives. Vous avez à l'écran un peu une idée ici des thématiques qui ont été choisies dans la dernière année et c'est à chaque mois, nous avons donc entre 15 et 20 coops qui viennent tantôt s'entretenir sur c'est quoi le processus de rémunération, comment je fais pour garder l'esprit coop dans ma coopérative, quelles sont les différentes pratiques que je peux avoir à l'intérieur de ma coopérative quand je parle d'autogestion. Donc, tous ces éléments-là sont abordés à travers cet espace de discussion, d'échange et de pratique, un peu comme une communauté de pratique pour nos membres du parcours coop. Mais on va un petit peu plus loin aussi. On développe ce qu'on appelle des tables sectorielles, c'est-à-dire des secteurs d'activité. Ici, vous avez la microbrasserie, les microbrasseries. Nous avons développé une image de marque qui s'appelle les brasseries coop au Québec et nous regroupons à travers cette table sectorielle 9 microbrasseries. Et ces microbrasseries-là se sont dotées d'une ressource pour les accompagner dans différents besoins. On pourrait les résumer en deux grandes familles. La commercialisation des microbrasseries auprès des détaillants. Vous avez ici une image qui donne l'exemple ici d'un frigo qui est à l'image de la marque des microbrasseries. Donc, on a mis en place différents frigos dans différents points de vente au Québec pour mettre en valeur les microbrasseries coop. Mais aussi, on a le volet qu'on appelle pour les partenaires. Donc, on essaie de sensibiliser à travers notre ressource qui est partagée, de sensibiliser l'ensemble des acteurs du grand mouvement coopératif au Québec et de l'économie sociale, de faire affaire avec les microbrasseries quand ils organisent des événements comme un congrès, par exemple, une conférence, de faire affaire avec les microbrasseries. Donc, on essaie à travers une animation d'une table sectorielle, de faire en sorte qu'on puisse pooler des ressources pour faire grandir les coopératives. Je vais vous terminer sur deux autres exemples qui sont assez nouveaux. On est en train de faire un peu la même chose avec les coopératives de travail dans le secteur de la communication et du marketing. On a plusieurs agences marketing, agences de communication, design graphique qui sont dans le secteur, qui sont en coopérative de travail et on est en train de les rassembler justement, encore une fois, pour faire en sorte qu'ils puissent se mettre ensemble, échanger des besoins, des services pour pouvoir avoir encore une plus grande capacité de desservir la clientèle en général. Et un autre volet qui est très intéressant aussi au Québec, c'est l'engouement pour les fermes coopératives. En 2007, en 2017, notez ici, en 2017, quand on avait fait le sondage, il y a combien de fermes coop au Québec qui sont en mode coopération du travail? On en dénotait 24. En quelques années, juste en 2021, quand on a refait le sondage, on était monté à 49. Donc, ça a doublé en même pas 5 ans. Donc, vous voyez là l'importance de ce secteur-là où on voit de plus en plus de jeunes qui choisissent la coopération du travail pour faire des fermes coop en agriculture biologique, en permaculture, parce que c'est du circuit local, ça correspond à leurs aspirations, c'est en lien avec la problématique écologique que l'on vit présentement. Donc, ils sont dans ces modes-là. Et aujourd'hui, 75% de ces coops, de ces fermes coop sont en mode coop de travail. Donc, on est aussi en train de travailler avec avec ces coops-là pour justement les consolider le réseau et l'aider à grandir de plus en plus en espérant qu'il y ait un meilleur équilibre entre l'agriculture industrielle et l'agriculture plus locale et écologique. Je
Ouais,
terminerai. Oui, c'est fini, hein? Je suis rendu à mon
ouais.
8 minutes. Alors, je vous invite à aller voir notre site web. Vous allez retrouver des références sur tout ce que je viens de vous dire et plus encore. Merci de votre attention.
Merci Frédéric. 8 ou 9 minutes, c'est pas suffisant effectivement pour détailler l'ensemble de ce qu'offre comme service le réseau coop et ce que fait le réseau pour développer les coops au Québec. En tout cas, on voit que ça marche aussi. Tu parlais de 14 à 125 membres. Le continuum de service qui vous permet d'accomplir en fait votre vision de développer une économie coopérative au Québec. Bravo pour tout ça. Et on continue de s'en inspirer. Thank you, thank you very much. And now, sorry, we will hear from Julia Martins Rodriguez. I told you, she's a researcher and project coordinator at the International Center for Cooperative Management at St. Mary's University. And she serves as a governor-appointed commissioner on employee ownership at the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade. She will share today how Namaste Solar, a worker co-op in Colorado, developed their own network and ecosystem in the renewable energy sector. Floor is yours, Julia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Can you hear me fine? Hi, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm a researcher at the ICCM. I'm based in Boulder, Colorado, the US, where I serve my public mandate as a commissioner within the Office of Economic Development, but now a newly formed Office of Employee Ownership, fairly new development from the office, where we develop public policies for our local worker cooperatives. And a few years ago, I mapped a very interesting, my co-author, Nathan Schneider, and we both mapped a very interesting network in Colorado in the renewable energy sector that I was invited to share with you today. And even though it's based in the US, I hope you find it inspiring and you can draw some lessons from it. And the Namaste Network is this vibrant multi-stakeholder network among single stakeholder cooperatives. Here we have a worker cooperative, a purchasing co-op, a shared service co-op, a consumer-owned financial institution, and an investor cooperative, investor-owned cooperative. And these cooperatives came about from recognizing a need or spotting a market opportunity, which is why we refer to this as an opportunistic network. They were developed in response to the demands and opportunities that emerged in the industry, not really from a pre-planned structure. And why is this case so interesting for us? Well, we tend to approach cooperative networks, principle 6 of cooperation among cooperatives, as a principle that translates the value of solidarity, usually thinking about cooperative associations and federations. We tend to interpret this principle of intercooperation in a pretty narrow way, wondering how small worker cooperatives can benefit from being part of a larger second-tier cooperative like the Canadian Worker Cooperative Federation. And indeed, this is a key aspect of intercooperation. But note, you also have alternative, additional pathways in terms of networking to strengthen your presence in the market. And the Namaste Network show us that. And the pioneering cooperative here is a worker cooperative. It's Namaste Solar. Namaste has been operating in Colorado since 2005. And the company specializes in designing and installing both residential and commercial solar systems. And initially incorporated as a C Corp, Namaste Solar has always embraced this employee ownership structure, has always deployed, democratic governance structures and a culture of highly transparent open book management. So a few years later, Namaste converted to the cooperative model and improved its management and ownership structure. And it has earned a very strong reputation in the local economy. It's a B Corp, and it has been highlighted. It was even highlighted several times during the Obama administration as a model for the country's post-recession recovery. There, every worker has the opportunity to become a co-owner, and through this candidacy process, they gain a comprehensive understanding of the business, including its finances, internal culture, and processes. And when faced, when faced with the competition from a very strong investor-backed national company offering competitive prices and conditions, Namaste Solar faced a crisis and initially explored the possibility of an acquisition and received several offers. But they ultimately decided against this bid, and instead they joined forces with other local cooperatives and solar businesses to form a purchasing cooperative. And this alliance gave birth to Amico Solar, which allowed them to pool their purchasing power and secure lower prices on both the products they sell, such PV modules, inverters, racking, all that, and the services they use. And this strategic move significantly enhanced their competitive edge against large competitors. And Amico Solar member companies identified another common challenge alongside the need for bulk purchasing. Many faced difficulties in selling operations and maintenance service contracts. So in the solar industry, these follow-on services are essential after the installations are completed, but providing these services for geographically distributed portfolios has become increasingly necessary, but pose significant challenge for smaller regionally focused companies, especially co-ops. So to address that, Amicus members decided to extend the cooperative model to the management of operations and maintenance contracts. And this approach has enabled them to contract with each other more easily. So they developed a sister organization to Amicus Solar that is called Amicus O&M to handle these operations and maintenance contracts. Also, solar projects entail these high upfront costs and existing loan products that are often challenging or unavailable, so they prevent less wealthy customers from benefiting from potential savings. So recognizing the financing as a significant barrier to attracting new customers, Amicus Solar members decided to take action and create a credit union. Yes. So in September 2017, they achieved this milestone when the National Credit Union Administration granted a federal charter to the Clean Energy Credit Union. This is the first of its kind in the country, the first U.S. credit union dedicated to mitigating climate change through inclusive financing. And also on this financial front, the Cashua Impact Fund was established by one of the Namaste Solar's co-founders in 2005 to facilitate access to investment capital for cooperatives and other mission-centric businesses. So Cashua is both a cooperative of investor and a public benefit corporation that pools resources for real estate and private business, not just focused on solar projects, but environmental conservation and stewardship, other co-ops, other employee-owned businesses, democratic workplaces, and all this amazing portfolio. Now, there is something very unique about Namaste Solar's contribution to the development of this network, which, all these cooperatives following Namaste Solar were created by early co-owners, workers of Namaste Solar. So now we classify this Namaste network as a complex multi-stakeholder network, but really it originally started with informal collaborations and friendship among Namaste's workers. So in this diagram on the screen, we can see some of these connections. So 3 Namaste Solar co-owners in particular have played a significant role in leadership of the cooperatives that the network gradually generated. And the relationship between these organizations is now part of this very complex contractual framework that has become institutionalized to an extent. So it's evident that many connections between these networked cooperatives stem from personal relationships developed by Namaste's co-workers. And as we can see, the achievements of these networks extend so beyond the initial goals of the individual co-ops involved. The Namaste Networks has facilitated the creation of sibling cooperatives along this journey. Even though we don't know if they plan to build more co-ops, there is a noticeable trend in establishing new cooperatives in response to market and industry needs. And the co-ops involved, they launched several projects with direct social, economic, environmental impacts in the community. They have a community profit sharing plan. They have a community solar gardens. So this case illustrates how a single group of worker entrepreneurs adopted diverse cooperative business structures to meet the social and market demands they faced. So it highlights a process, that transcends those original informal collaborations, leading to establishing organizations that benefit the industry. So I invite you, based on this case, to think how you as a worker and your worker cooperative could build ties within the industry to solve some of the shared challenges and improve your position in the market. I think this is the beauty in this case. Thank you so much. I'm open for questions, and I will post the full report in our chat.
That's great. Thank you, Julia. What a great example of networking, of ecosystem, and Juliet mentioned the principle 6. I really believe this example really proves that there are no boundaries to inter-cooperation and cooperation amongst co-ops, and using this business opportunity to develop the ecosystem. It's great. I've heard that story before, and it's always so inspiring. Thank you, and thanks for the full report there in the chat. And then we have Mario. Mario is, he's from BC, from Surrey, BC, works with solid state community industries. Solid States builds a solidarity economy in Surrey, mostly by developing worker co-ops, but not only. Solid State is built by and for racialized communities who aim to create new kinds of non-extractive economic opportunities and relationships. We asked Mario to share with us today the work of Solid State and how they meet the needs of their communities. Thank you, Mario, for being here, and the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to see all these friendly faces, people that I've worked with in the past, and to be a part of this conference. Representing Solid State, who was already introduced. And I know that the topic is about unleashing us collectively, but there's also a metaphor of an ecosystem here. So if you'll excuse me being like a little bit pedantic or maybe obvious, I'll actually define what the metaphor is. So an ecosystem, it's a system, it's made up of relationships or interactions, and they provide what's necessary for life or flourishing. So that's going to be my jumping off point for this discussion. And I'm going to talk about an ecosystem at a couple of different levels. Then that'll be familiar to people, right? There's kind of our world climate, which is a mess, and then there's our regional ecosystems, and then down to the very local, inside a pot, there's an ecosystem. So here are some of the kind of players or concepts that I'm going to be introducing as I talk. And I'll start with the local, because Solid State is very much about having a local place-based ethos. And that place is the center of Surrey, which is really traditional, ancestral Stolen, Semiahmoo, Katsi, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Kakite, and Tsawwassen land. And Surrey is an interesting place. It's one of Canada's fastest growing cities. It's rapidly changing. If you go to Surrey one time and you come back 6 months later or 9 months later, you'll feel and you'll notice visually that the skyline has changed completely, that everything seems a little bit more built up and crowded because the pace of development is very fast. And that means that there's a lot of lags for the community to fill in terms of having community spaces, spaces to just be with each other, spaces that don't have kind of this rapacious commercial orientation. And I think the bedrock of solid state, before we even do cooperative development or economic democracy or lending, is providing that community space. So in that spirit, consider this your invitation to come down for our food sometime and just hang out. You can get in touch with me later to do that. But we do have an economic function that we carry out, and that's to help develop worker cooperatives. And we don't do this alone. We have partners both regionally and nationally. First, I'll talk about or internationally, because this is a kind of a relevant change for Solid State in the last year, is that we became part of this network pictured on the screen called Seed Commons, seedcommons.org. Let me just check if I sent the links yet. Okay, here's a bunch of links that you guys can see now. Is the presentation still sharing, or did I stop sharing that?
Yeah, I think you stopped sharing it.
Oh, then let me go back to it. Oop.
Yeah, the map is impressive. We would like to see it again.
So what is Seed Commons? Seed Commons is a national cooperative of cooperative loan funds. We're right up there at the corner in a part of, like, it doesn't even, the map doesn't really have Canada yet. It just has our little dot kind of ambiguously placed somewhere, probably in the sea, actually. If you think about where they put the dot, that's not where Surrey is. It's a little bit further east. But all of these cooperatives are part of one at this point, international cooperative fund. It's around 60 million US dollars, raised from all kinds of investors, over 300 investors, at least one of which has the last name Bezos, via foundations or what have you. But kind of think around that level of, people with a conscious, impact investors or philanthropists that have capitalized this fund dedicated to building worker cooperatives. And it's this structure that shares capital and knowledge and technical assistance at kind of as wide a level as it can, and allows for the origination and the relationship building and the technical assistance to take place at the local level. And that's what that's the piece that we do. I just got back from the Seed Commons National Gathering in Baltimore. One of the links in the chat that I put is for the Baltimore Roundtable for Economic Democracy. And I think they're a very beautiful example of an ecosystem that is developed locally. So going back, like, it's an ecosystem. It needs to provide the conditions for flourishing, right? And what are those conditions? At least one of them is capital. So if you go to Baltimore today and you take a tour of the cooperative ecosystem, you'll see visibly there's a neighborhood where there's a cooperative here, and then one block down, another one, and then 2 blocks down, a third one. And capital was an essential element to make that happen. So in the past 5 years, Seed Commons has put over 20 million US dollars into Baltimore cooperatives, which is not that big a number, but this is Baltimore. It's one of the poorest cities in the United States. I saw on a tour of cooperatives, I saw a house that could be purchased for 11,000 US dollars. Granted, it had no roof, but that $20 million goes a long way in Baltimore, and it's created dozens, I dare say hundreds of cooperative jobs in that city. So that's clearly one of the key elements you need. That's one of the nutrients that this ecosystem needs to transport around, is capital. And it's been a big focus of Solid State over the past year. So we've been involved in some of the work that's been going on federally to try to create social finance intermediaries. We initially were trying to create our own cooperative fund, but kind of decided it was a better deal, more tractable operationally, to go with the Seed Commons structure. What else to say about this? it's clearly not enough, right? You need this local level of this local ecosystem to provide other resources. So I'll talk about how we do 2 examples of partnerships that we have with organizations active here. So Young Agrarians, who you might be aware of, is a national nonprofit dedicated to getting young people into farming. And they do a bunch of neat stuff with business development, business mentorship. And they have had a cooperative development function. So we're working on a project together with Young Agrarians, the African Canadian Agricultural Producers Co-op, a brand new co-op. And here, like, they bring some nutrients, some resources to the table that we don't have internally at Solid State, right? We don't have expertise in agriculture. We don't have experience in that sector, but they do. And they have an active land matching program and so on. The piece that we can pick up there is the capital access piece, the co-op development piece, and features which Young Agrarians might not have. Another example in our local ecosystem is cooperating with GIA. I'm sure you guys know GIA because they're going to be everywhere in this conference. I think that a member is presenting tomorrow. GIA brings a lot of experience with actual operational aspects of running a co-op. And we don't have that much experience at Solid State doing that. So we're really happy to have them collaborating on this project to create a bookkeeping cooperative called Slate. They're coming soon. I think even Slate, like, thinking about it through this metaphor, what do co-ops need to flourish? Clearly, they need capital, they need sectoral expertise, technical expertise, and they need good services, right? I think, like, again, harping on this metaphor, the ecosystem, it's made up of these interactions, right? Of these relationships. So I think our role in, like, aspiring to be an ecosystem builder is to foster them as much as possible. One step we're taking to do that is changing our approach to training and co-op development. And basically, when we take in new co-ops, which we just did in September, we had an intake, a competitive intake, where we took in 6 new co-ops. Our plan going forward is to kind of train somebody there, a paid training, to be an endogenous co-op developer, right? And there's the idea there is to transmit some of that knowledge and some of those resources to grow the pool of people that have that are conversant in this type of economic development work, but also to help create relationships between those people, right? They're getting paid, they have a reason to show up to a space where this is being discussed and where relationships can be formed. So yeah, that's all I had to say. That's kind of how we're approaching ecosystems from our perch here at Solid State. Thank you so much. And do check out the links I put in the chat.
Yeah, thank you for the links. Thank you for your presentation, Mario. It's great to hear about your work and the global and local ecosystems you're building and participating in. You guys are so good. We're right on time. Thanks for respecting the time that was allocated to you.